Hold on, who are you? Get him into the car, quick!
Guys, welcome to a classic film review of 1947's Odd Man Out, starring James Mason, Robert Newton and Cyril Cusack. Now, this was directed by Carol Reed, and it's the film noir crime drama that sees an Irish nationalist leader having to escape the police after a failed robbery in Belfast. Having been wounded in the process and alone in the city, he must find his way to freedom, avoiding the police and a cast of shady underworld characters. Now, this was seen as James Mason's catapult into stardom, despite the fact that he doesn't have a huge amount of screen time and is almost wordless for much of that runtime. But this is a top tier British noir from a director who was just about to reach the peak of his powers. Let's take a look. So Odd Man Out is quite a curious film. Now, opening scenes would have you believe that you're about to see a heist thriller, one that takes place in Belfast and is carried out by a small gang headed by James Mason, who plays Johnny McQueen. He's the chief of an Irish organisation, though not mentioned by name, but obviously is the IRA. Anyways, he's busted out of prison and has been lying low for 6 months in the home of Kathleen, played by Kathleen Ryan. Now, of course, Mason is playing an Irishman here, so there's an accent to contend with, if that type of thing bothers you. But like I mentioned, he doesn't have a lot of lines, and herein lies one of the most interesting elements of Odd Man Out, and that's the fact that its crime thriller plot is dispensed with almost immediately, and that's perhaps really its greatest strength.
Go easy with those now.
Well, anybody that asks for it can have it.
Yes, but don't encourage them to ask. You haven't been mixed up in shootings before. You don't want to start now.
Okay.
Now, importantly for a film like this, it's not preachy for a start. It doesn't get into political arguments. There's even some opening text that lets us know that this isn't really about partisan struggle in Northern Ireland, and the word Republican I don't think is ever even said out loud. Anyway, the film plays out in the aftermath of a heist gone wrong, with one innocent man dead and Mason receiving a mortal bullet wound.
Who are you? Get him into the car, quick!
On the run in the city, he staggers from one potential hiding place to another, and it's here that you realise the story isn't about Mason and his ideals or his well-being, but about the inhabitants of the city itself and how the conflict will affect people from all different walks of life. Now, there's very much a Dickensian feeling to seeing crooks and down-and-outs wandering the snowy nighttime scenes of Belfast, especially seeing as there's a distinct lack of Irish accents on show here. The first time that I saw this film, I was quite confused, I think, expecting a James Mason starring role in something like the final act of The Third Man spread out across 2 hours, but then getting this moody series of encounters with everyday folk, a couple wandering into Mason's hiding place.
Put it out. Clear it off.
It's that fella. Johnny.
Lenny, come on. You'd better not get mixed up in this.
An encounter on a tram to the Falls Road, and a cabbie unaware that he's got the wounded fugitive in his cab. All ordinary folk drawn into the drama despite minding their own business.
Carry on the way you're going.
No, I can't, man, I can't. Listen, I'm not for you. I'm not against you. But I can't afford to get mixed up in this.
Hey, you! Come on, get along there.
Yeah, yes, Constable. Right away, Constable. Just in a moment.
I say ordinary, but we also get Robert Newton as a flamboyant artist who wants to draw Mason as he's dying, leading to one of the film's moments of feverish hallucination.
If he does, what we tell the police? Stop arguing. You've done what you wanted to do, now let me. I will not allow him to sit there and die in that chair.
Talk about his life. Aren't you telling me that you're going to hand him over to them?
Yes, to people who heal him.
Yeah, when he's fit, they'll pass him on to the police.
Now, this all will divide audiences, I'm sure. The film does push its luck in the second half, where Mason is barely conscious and reduced to just a MacGuffin that's passed from pillar to post by a handful of colourful characters. And your tolerance for how much screen time they are afforded will most likely decide your enjoyment of Odd Man Out as a whole. Now, British director Carol Reed, who'd already made the excellent Night Train to Munich, was about to hit three strikes with this film, the following year's Fallen Idol, and then his 1949 masterwork, The Third Man. Now, here shooting mostly on location in West Belfast and using shadow and light to highlight a city closing in around Mason's Johnny McQueen. The film's weather always baffled me though. For a film taking place over the course of a day and a night, we start with clear skies, we move into heavy rain before settling on snow for the final act. Now, of course, there is a romantic subplot here regarding Kathleen Ryan and Mason's tragic hero, and it is a bit underdeveloped but does play a pivotal role in the film's finale. But I'll admit that Kathleen Ryan does hold it all together. It's her character really that's the connection between all these people and the dying fugitive that stops it being too episodic. Elsewhere in the cast you'll find Doctor Who himself, William Hartnell, Cyril Cusack, and most of the trope from Dublin's Abbey Theatre. Now, James Mason himself said that this was the best performance of his career. Personally, I think it's his turn in Bigger Than Life, but I won't argue with the man himself. After Odd Man Out, Mason was a star, an international star, and would forge his legacy in projects like Desert Fox, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, North by Northwest, and Lolita. He worked non-stop until his death in 1984. Now, although Reed's work was well recognised throughout his career, it wouldn't be until 1968's Oliver that he would finally win his Best Director Oscar. Now, Mason, who was nominated for a few Oscars during his career, is of course one of cinema's great talents, for me anyway, and considering this is basically a 2-hour death scene for him, he gets to do at least a few minutes of actual acting, including an early panic attack brought on by the hustle and bustle of the outside world after spending so much time in prison. And he does a great job reacting to figments of his imagination as he succumbs to his wounds.
I remember when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I understood as a child.
Now, Odd Man Out was based on a novel by Frederick Lawrence Green, which is apparently more scathing about the Irish Republican Army. Here, though, Mason's character is enthusiastic about providing the party with funds by means of robbery, but is doubting the use of violence and deadly force, which, of course, he must take to defend himself during the film's robbery.
They trust you, all right, but Dennis, I'm the leader of the organization in this city. I've spent months planning this raid to get the funds for all the things we need for Maureen and her husband and the others. I've got my orders and I'll see them through.
It's an angle to make him a more sympathetic character, with the other members of his gang made to look like drunken down and outs who get themselves in fatal trouble the minute their leader is out of the picture.
Ah, let her come in. Put away that thing, for heaven's sake, now. You're a terrible man, there's no doubt about it. And you do nothing without you've a load of booze inside you. Leave us a spoonful. Come on, put your coat on, come on.
Now, Odd Man Out is a rare thriller, one that smuggles in politics and religious discourse, all without having to mention Republicans and Loyalists, or Catholics or Protestants. A film that seesaws between stark reality and fever dream imagery, and a movie that can stand shoulder to shoulder with any film noir from any era. Go check it out.
I dreamt I'd escaped from prison. I dreamt I was on a raid, robbing a mill, funds for the organization. I remember I wasn't feeling so good. I hadn't felt so good ever since I'd escaped from here.